Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. I'm just feeding Rowan of Rin while getting ready for the morning's outsiders and first moon dive. What's the matter? Have you dropped your bit of bread, Rowan? This is the fellow who puts the scratches on the door. He's the one who can sniff the lintel. So as I go to put the radio out there, I'm probably going to have to feed him a biscuit. You want a biscuit? Yes. Yes, you want a biscuit, don't you? Okay, that's a good boy. Hello, Dyson. There we go. Radio's up. Yeah, little greedy guts. Yeah, boss, come on. That's a boy. That's it. Now, these are the scratches he puts on the door when he decides that I haven't come out early enough. Isn't that right, mate? Hmm? You're a good boy. Yes, you are. Very good alpha male kangaroo. He keeps his hands down because he doesn't want me to think that he's threatening me. It's really nice. Yes, there you go. That's a boy. It's a good boy, aren't you? Yes. It's a lovely bullet hole you've got in your ear there, son. That's it. You going to let me through? That's a boy. It's a good boy. Close the door so you know that when those bickies on the ground are finished, then this breakfast restaurant is closed. Okay? But yeah, there's his scratches. And he knows that it's the right-hand door that opens to the right. So that's the direction that he scratches the door towards. Because you're not silly, are you, Rowan? You're a very clever alpha male kangaroo. Okay, so I'm all set up. And His Royal Highness Lord Rowan of Rin is sitting in his favourite prime position, prime being the ancient word for 9 o'clock in the morning. He's sitting prime in the sun under the tree. That's it. Well, I've got a Swamp Wallaby here for the outsiders.
Time now for Outsiders. I'm Barry Cassidy and you're not.
Time for Outsiders. This morning they are Sinclair Davidson from the School of Economics at RMIT, Van Badham, who's a Guardian Australia columnist, writer and activist, and Miriam Cosick is a journalist and author. First, to politicians and perks.
That as a result of decisions that this government has just made, building on the decisions we took early in our term to abolish the employment of immediate family members by members of parliament, to stop first-class overseas travel by members of parliament, and to restrict family travel, building on those decisions, this root and branch reform should finally mean that the public can be confident that members of parliament are doing their job in a responsible fashion that accords with community standards.
Prime Minister Tony Abbott taking the gardener's approach, root and branch reform. Bronwyn Bishop stepped down as Speaker of the House last Sunday afternoon, but still the stories of apparently over-the-top travel have been tumbling out. The independent federal member Andrew Wilkie says anger about the way politicians are spending taxpayers' money has people stopping him in the street.
That lady was very mad about Bronwyn Bishop, but then sort of cross-referencing it to her circumstances and the difficulties. You know, she can't get a lot of things that she needs urgently. So understandably incensed at some of this stuff.
Yes, this week others joined Bronwyn Bishop in the naughty corner. Long-serving Liberal Philip Ruddock got a mention, as has Education Minister Christopher Pyne, Treasurer Joe Hockey, and Labor frontbencher Tony Burke really felt the heat.
I find it strange that the chief spear thrower for the Labor Party was Mr Burke, who had to read pay not once, not twice, not 3 times, not even 10 times, but 15 times. And I believe that Mr Burke should be considering his position, given his record.
That's the Employment Minister, Senator Eric Abbott. Van Badham, do you think we will see more circumspection now from MPs as far as their travel claims?
Well, I think what we've learned about MPs, they're precisely as circumspect as we are observant. And when there is outrage, then they account for their errors. But clearly what happened with Bronwyn Bishop and with the whole non-apology from Bronwyn Bishop around what happened, you're seeing that entitlements are not just a question of money, they're a question of attitude. There are some people who enter Parliament and appoint themselves certainly a kind of entitled aristocracy with a sense that they are more than due to their station to furnish a lifestyle that the average Australian will not come near. And I think that, you know, she wouldn't have resigned unless she had been forced to. She certainly was never going to apologise, and it's the responsibility of Australians to keep the pressure on all of them all the time.
Well, Sinclair, how do the sorts of travel claims that have been made by these MPs rack up against what's standard and reasonable in other sectors, in academia or in the private sector?
I think you'd have to be very near the absolute top of the private sector to get anything like this, the sort of routine largesse which our members of parliament help themselves to. Certainly in academia, it's not my experience at all. When I've travelled, I always travel economy class, not even premium economy class these days. So I'm very surprised that members of parliament, backbenchers really, sort of research assistants at some level, would be getting such a high level of remuneration for a start and largesse at the public purse for a second.
Well, Miriam Cosick, despite the Prime Minister's best efforts over the past month to talk about this as a problem with the system, not with individuals, is there a sense now that it is turning into a bit of a witch hunt?
Look, I don't think it's a witch hunt at all. But what I do think is that there are rules in place and people have been flouting them for years. I don't quite understand how it's got this far. I'd like to know where the scrutiny is. Van took the words out of my mouth when she said, as circumspect as we are observant, because I'd like to know first who signs off on this travel. I mean, how could Bronwyn Bishop, for example, actually get to book a helicopter for the 75k between Melbourne and Geelong? And also that, you know, there's a lot of weasel words going on here on both sides of Parliament. I mean, community expectations. They all want now to suddenly be in line with community expectations. Who would have different expectations? Who would think it is okay to go by helicopter from Melbourne to Geelong, except a reincarnation of Marie Antoinette, for example?
Did they have helicopters in the French Revolution?
Well, reincarnation. I stipulated reincarnation, and Sinclair, she did get the chop.
Except, Van, the current issue, for example, with Tony Burke and Joe Hockey and Christopher Pine claiming travel expenses for their children to accompany them on a work trip. Now, I can't say I know all the details, but maybe it's a way for super busy fathers who have to travel a lot for work to stay in touch with their kids by, you know, taking them with them. This sort of relates to what we were talking about in Outsiders last week. We're talking about boosting the numbers of women in Parliament and that politics just isn't a family-friendly job.
No, well, you certainly do give up that family time to serve the nation. And I mean, I'm actually in favour of creating more flexible arrangements around families being able to spend time with members of parliament, because I actually think it's a way of keeping politicians in touch. I think that the more time you spend with particularly your young children as a member of parliament, you know, it makes you more aware of how the education system is functioning and what the day-to-day reality of young people is. And I think that's a good thing. So I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with indulgence in luxury. And I think this is the issue with Bronwyn Bishop, is that it's one thing to claim travel to go from Melbourne to Geelong if you're on government business, of course, but to arrive, you know, with all the pomp and ceremony of, you know, a visiting international celebrity, especially I was in Geelong last weekend, and much mirth occurred when we discovered a local helicopter service would do a trip for $55 as opposed to $5,000, leading to the question, just what extra services were thrown in?
Well, one is never seen in a $55 helicopter. That's all I want. But just pick up on that point. I have travelled with my young children on business, but I've paid for them myself out of my after-tax pre-GST income. And I think Mr. Burke and Mr. Pine and Mr. Hockey et al. Should do the same as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think I'm a bit out of step with a lot of people who take my position on this, because I actually think politicians should fly business class. I don't want to see
Should their kids
politicians
also?
Well, this is the point. I think they should, because they need space, they need privacy to work. I don't want to see my politician getting off the plane all with, neck injuries, and the person next to them having looked over their shoulder at the correspondence they're writing. But their children and their families should fly economy. And then it's up to, and I also think that it's quite nice that we as a society give them a few options during the year to bring their families with them. And we'll even pay for it, because, listen, they spend a lot of time, away from their families, and they work hours that the rest of us don't even comprehend. But the family should fly economy. And then it's up to the politician to either upgrade those tickets out of the family purse, if they think their family should fly business, or move back to sit with them if they decide they want that. But 17, whatever that amount was for Tony Burke to take the family to Uluru, I don't think so.
12,000 was one figure quoted.
12,000, yeah, that's what I don't think so.
Well, okay, now that the position of parliamentary speaker is vacant, there's been speculation all this week as to who will fill Bronwyn Bishop's shoes. We'll have an announcement tomorrow. But Sinclair, in the meantime, let's continue to speculate, shall we? Who do you think will be the next Speaker of the House?
I actually have no idea. I've looked at the candidates, and none of them have sort of really excited me. But on the other hand, people grow into the role. So very often they grow badly into the role, perhaps, but they grow into the role. So I'm hoping we'll be pleasantly surprised when somebody steps up tomorrow.
Van, as Russell Broadbent, the Victorian backbencher, exciting you, or
No,
another
I don't
Victorian
think
Tony
I will
Smith?
ever live in a universe where Russell Broadbent excites me, actually.
South
but
Australian Andrew
15 views in an
Southcott?
hour,
I
that's
think
pretty
the
cool.
thing
Philip
is,
Ruddock?
Philip Ruddock is the
Ross
theatrical
Lester?
choice of the names that I've seen. But really, I think it's time for us to have the most anonymous speaker possible. I think what we've all learnt from the Bronwyn Bishop record number of expulsions, more than 400 times she's kicked the Labor Party out of the chamber, is that we need a speaker who actually facilitates and takes the responsibility of impartiality in facilitating debate seriously. I don't want a speaker who is the theatrical actor in events. I would like that to come from, the bloody battle of debate between, the opposing sides of the House, with a speaker who facilitates that and allows that to happen fairly. So I saw a list this morning of, a bunch of near indistinguishable conservative white guys, as long as they keep their heads down and the debate flowing freely. I think that's probably the best any of us can hope for.
Miriam, what do you think makes a good speaker?
Well, I'm with both of them, actually. I'm with Sinclair in that I don't really know. I look at the names and I think, well, even if you do know their performance in Parliament, that is in the cut and thrust of politics, not in that kind of judicious, careful, using the guidance of the rules role of the Speaker. And it's really only people within the party who can know whether the candidate has those qualifications. And it's up for us, it's up to us to see whether they bear out those expectations. But I think they've got to be very careful to find somebody who will apply the rules equally across the House and maintain some order in the House according to rules.
Well, whoever it is, I don't think it's going to be anyone in pearls and furs. No women have been put forward.
I don't know. Philip Ruddock's at the end of his career. I mean, maybe he can afford to lash out a bit, express himself more freely.
Sharman Stone's name has been mentioned, hasn't it?
There you go.
But if there's a woman good enough to be the Speaker, why isn't she in the Cabinet? I would have thought that would be the first.
Good question.
Yes.
The real question now, of course, that we have to get onto is who's going to be the captain of the Australian cricket team? Van?
I think it's going to be Steve Smith, and I would personally support that choice. I think Smith's great. I'm very sad to see Michael Clarke go, despite the disaster, because I've always been a bit of a Clarke fan, and he's certainly the last of a certain generation that I think will be much missed in Australian cricket.
Well, honey bunchykins, who gives a flying fuck? Who's the captain of the Australian croquet team? We're coming up on the upload limit, so I'll just stop that. And first Moondog will be a new broadcast.